The only innocent people that are in Gaza now are the 229 hostages that were taken. Once they will go back to Israel, we will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all. We will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all. We will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all.
What's happening in America's college campuses is horrific. Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. They call for the annihilation of Israel. They attack Jewish students. They attack Jewish faculty. This is reminiscent of what happened in German universities in the 1930s. It's unconscionable. It has to be stopped. It has to be condemned, and condemned unequivocally. But that's not what happened. The response of several university presidents was shameful. Now, fortunately, state, local, federal officials, many of them have responded differently.
My question to you, are mobs shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, or long live the infantata, are those anti-Semitic comments?
When I hear those terms, I find them very upsetting. And I have heard...
That's a great answer to a question I didn't ask, so let me repeat the question. When mobs or people are shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free, or long live the infantata, are those anti-Semitic statements? Yes or no? It's not how you feel, it's...
I hear them as such. Some people don't. We have sent a clear message.
So is that yes?
We have sent a clear message to our community.
I'm not asking about the message.
Yeah.
Is that fall under definition of anti-Semitic behavior? Yes or no? Why is it so tough?
Because it's a difficult issue, because
I realize it's a difficult
hear it as
issue,
anti-Semitic,
but here's
other
the
people
problem,
do not.
Is when people can't answer a simple question and they have a definition, but then they can't, well, I'm not really sure if that qualifies.
So
I'm asking a simple question. Maybe I should ask your task force. Does that qualify as anti-Semitic behavior, those statements, yes or no?
Could you provide for us a definition of anti-Semitism?
Anti-Semitism is a hate against their religion. Anti-Semitism is a hate against their religion.
Anti-Semitism is a hate against their religion.
Anti-Semitism is a hate against their religion. By the time you get to the 18th and 20th centuries, when so many Jews have assimilated, they are in culture, they are in arts, they're in science, it's no longer against them for their religion, it's against them for their race. Because anti-Semitism is the oldest hate in the world, and the hate that mutates.
Are you familiar with Genesis 12:3?
Probably not as well as you are, Congressman.
Well, it's pretty clear. It was the covenant that God made with Abraham. And that covenant was real clear. If you bless Israel, I will bless you. If you curse Israel, I will curse you. And then in the New Testament, it was confirmed that all nations would be blessed through you. So you do not know about that.
I have heard that. Now that you've explained it, yes, I have heard that before.
It's now familiar. Do you consider that a serious issue? I mean, do you want Columbia University to be cursed by God of the Bible? I mean, do you want Columbia University to be cursed by God of the Bible?
I mean, do you want Columbia University to be cursed by God?
Here's the deal. We fail the mission, you die.
We find out any information you give us is false, you die.
If we find out you have personalized license plates, you die.
What? No.
If you mismatch blacks, you die.
No.
If you cough without covering your mouth.
Harley, those last three aren't things.
I mean, do you want Columbia University to be cursed by God of the Bible?
Definitely not.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Dr. Shafiq, you realize that at some of these events, the slurs and the chants have been F the Jews, death to Jews,
Yep.
F Israel, no safe place, death to the Zionist state, Jews out. You don't think those are anti-Jewish?
Completely anti-Jewish, completely unacceptable.
So you changed your testimony on that
horrible.
issue as well? So there have been anti-Jewish protests?
I didn't get to finish my sentence. So what I was going to say was there were protests that were called
That's not what you were asked. You were asked, were there any anti-Jewish protests? And you said no.
So the protest was not labeled as an anti-Jewish protest.
I'm not asking what it was labeled.
Anti-Israeli government
The
policy.
question wasn't what it was labeled.
But anti-Semitic incidents happen, or anti-Semitic things were said. So I just wanted
It is
to
an
finish.
anti-Jewish protest. You agree with that? You change your testimony?
Congresswoman, anti-Jewish things were said at protests, yes.
What happened at those hearings yesterday should be of grave concern to everybody, regardless of their feelings on Palestine, regardless of their politics. What happened yesterday was a demonstration of the growing and intensifying attack on liberal education writ large. So there was an opportunity yesterday for President Shafiq to come forward to mount a robust defense of the university as a unique site for a debate of difficult ideas, for the fact that slogans can't be reduced to sound bites, that in fact that what happens at the university is deep discussion, deep thought, and that in fact instead what we got was a live performance of her not just throwing protesters and specific professors under the bus, which we somewhat anticipated, as awful as that was, but in fact throwing the entire university system under the bus, throwing out established policies and procedures of the university, throwing out rules that have been established by the American Association of University Professors for decades as best practices, actually announcing unilateral decisions on faculty members on live television, which she doesn't actually have the authority under the university to do. And I could say more, but really I was astonished. It went worse even than any of us had expected.
The response of several university presidents was shameful. Now, fortunately, state, local, federal officials, many of them have responded differently, but there has to be more. More has to be done. It has to be done not only because they attack Israel, that's bad enough. Not only because they want to kill Jews wherever they are, that's bad enough. It's also, when you listen to them, it's also because they say not only death to Israel, death to the Jews, but death to America. And this tells us that there's an anti-Semitic surge here that has terrible consequences. We see this exponential rise of anti-Semitism throughout America and throughout Western societies as Israel tries to defend itself against genocidal terrorists who hide behind civilians. Yet it is Israel that is falsely accused of genocide, Israel that is falsely accused of starvation and all sundry war crimes. It's all one big libel, but that's not new. We've seen in history that anti-Semitic attacks were always preceded by vilification and slander, lies that were cast against the Jewish people that are unbelievable, yet people believed them. And what is important now is for all of us who are interested and cherish our values and our civilization, to stand up together and to say enough is enough. We have to stop anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine.
The only innocent people that are in Gaza now are the 229 hostages that were taken. Once they will go back to Israel, we will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all. We will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all. We will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all.
The war in Gaza began on October 7th, when Hamas, a terrorist organization, invaded Israel, killed some 1,200 innocent men, women, and children, and took over 230 people into captivity, many of whom are still being held. It has always been my view that Israel had a right to defend itself respond to this attack and go after Hamas. It is also my view that Israel does not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people, which is exactly what it is doing. Let's discuss briefly what's going on in Gaza. There are about 2.2 million people living in Gaza, mostly poor and struggling people. Since the war began, over 33,000 Palestinians have been killed and 77,000 wounded. Unbelievably, 5% of the residents of Gaza have been killed or wounded in a 6-month period. 2/3 of these people are women and children.
The only innocent people that are in Gaza now are the 229 hostages that were taken. Once they will go back to Israel, we will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all.
The worst single mass killing of Palestinians in the Israel-Gaza war so far. Hundreds are dead after a blast at a hospital. Chaos and horror at the scene. Much of the building has been destroyed. A panic to treat the injured. Thousands of people were sheltering at the hospital, having fled Israel's bombing campaign targeting Hamas. They thought they were safe. Now Gazans once again count the cost of this war.
Israel denies it was responsible, blaming Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Jordan, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia condemn what they say was an Israeli attack.
In terms of the warnings that you got, could you tell us what form of warnings? Were they written warnings, telephone calls, and how many of them were there ahead of this?
We have, since the decision we made about evacuation of North Gaza to the south of Gaza, we have received 3 warnings. So beginning, I think, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So these 3 were many by telephone. We would phone the administration, telling them as much as they did, because they have their phone numbers of all the directors of the hospital, so they can they either send message or whatever means they have to notify. So these are the 3 warnings that there were.
So you received, not only do you receive 3 warnings after the first strike to your church, saying that the hospital would be bombed. What did the warning say?
The warning that the hospital will be bombed. Let's be clear. The warnings, they were to evacuate the hospital.
To evacuate the hospital?
Yes, that was the warning.
But the warning was that otherwise, sorry to be clarified, that was implicit in that was the idea that the hospital would be bombed because you had to evacuate it. They said you should evacuate the hospital.
The connection you make, what happened on the facts on the ground? 3 days before the actual bombing, the hospital was hit in the 2 floors that I mentioned, and then we continued to receive the notices to evacuate, and then the hospital was struck last night. So these are the facts on the ground that actually happened.
Given that the facts as you have set them out to us here in this room, the Israeli denials that they are involved in the bombing and that it was an Israeli missile, we must accept that they are worthless, they are baseless, those Israeli denials, given they sent you 3 warnings to evacuate the hospital. Do you agree with that analysis?
People can analyze what they want to analyze. Again, from our point of view, we as the church, we continue to say that the place, the hospital itself is a sanctuary for people, and what happened there is a crime. We are not, again, a military people to decide, or we are not journalists to analyze. We are not politicians to decide. What we are saying here is that, what has happened in the hospital is a crime, is a massacre.
The only innocent people that are in Gaza now are the 229 hostages that were taken. Once they will go back to Israel, we will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all.
Since the war began, 1.7 million people, over 75% of the population, have been driven from their homes. Over 60% of the housing units in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. This housing destruction is unprecedented in modern history. But it's not just housing. Israel has systematically destroyed the healthcare system in Gaza. Gaza had 36 hospitals before the war. Now just 11 are partially operational. Persistent attacks on healthcare facilities have killed more than 400 healthcare workers. But it's not just housing and the healthcare system. It's the physical, civilian infrastructure in Gaza, which is also being destroyed. More than half of the water and sanitation systems have been put out of commission. Only 1 of 3 water pipes is operating. Clean drinking water is severely limited, and sewage, raw sewage, is running through the streets, spreading disease. And as we speak, there is virtually no electricity.
Let's be clear, reading the testimony of survivors of October 7th from Kibbutz Be'eri, like Yasmin Porat, was extremely harrowing. What she alleges is not only that her husband was killed in the initial takeover, but also she then says that the Israeli military tanks fired on the room where the hostages were, killing 12 Israeli civilian captives. We have also seen fantastic work in the Haaretz newspaper by Amos Harel, where he speaks at length about Brigadier General Rosenfeld, who was in charge of the Haaretz crossing. Now, when this military base was taken over, what he says, Amos Harel in Haaretz, the well-known Israeli newspaper, he says that Rosenfeld, when he realized that the base was overtaken, called in an airstrike. This is in Haaretz. These are not my words. These are the words of Amos Harel. What we then saw is, since October the 7th, 22 Israeli civilian detainees killed in Gaza by Israeli airstrikes.
Some of them are holding their own civilians hostage, but what about our civilians that are in Gaza?
Yeah. So it's the same thing. If Israel would tell them, we're going to destroy you, and there are no conditions, there's nothing you can say that's going to stop us. And what do they need the hostages for?
But Amalek also just killed.
That's why we just have to kill them.
So they're gonna kill our hostages either way.
So where does that leave us? So they are, if they say, you can't bomb us, you're going to kill the hostages. So we're helpless. We can't do that. We are not helpless. We're going to do what we're going to do.
The Israeli military has something called the Hannibal Directive. The Hannibal Directive was developed in Lebanon in the 80s by the Israelis with the clear understanding that they do not want the other side to take hostages. So, for example, you have the case of Hada Golding in 2014, what Israel called Operation Protective Edge, which killed over 2,200 Palestinians. But when this Israeli soldier was taken captive by the Palestinians, Israel then proceeded to kill everyone, including the civilians in the area around where he was kept and the soldier himself. So what Israel has, unfortunately, is a policy of killing captives.
But it's not just housing and healthcare and infrastructure that is being destroyed. There are 12 universities in Gaza. Unbelievably, each and every one of them has been either damaged or destroyed. In addition, primary and secondary schools have also been completely disrupted. 625,000 students have no access to an education. And as horrible as all of this is, there is something happening now that is even worse. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinian children face starvation. People in Gaza struggle to survive from day to day, foraging for leaves, eating animal feed, or splitting the occasional aid package amongst their families. At least 28 children have died of malnutrition and dehydration already, but the real toll is likely much higher. Let's be clear. These conditions are the result of Israel's arbitrary restrictions on the aid getting into Gaza. This is not a matter of debate. It is an obvious reality that numerous humanitarian organizations have repeatedly confirmed. For months, thousands of trucks carrying life-saving supplies have sat just miles away from starving children, prevented from reaching their destination by unreasonable Israeli restrictions and a military campaign conducted with little regard for civilian life. Blocking desperately needed U.S. humanitarian aid is obscene and unacceptable. It is also a violation of American law. The Foreign Assistance Act is clear. No U.S. assistance may be provided to any country that, quote, prohibits or otherwise restricts, directly or indirectly, the transport or delivery of United States humanitarian assistance, end of quote. Israel is clearly in violation of that law. What Israel is doing today in Gaza and the West Bank is a defining moment for Americans, because we are directly complicit in this horrific war. The U.S. military is not dropping 2,000-pound bombs on civilian apartment buildings, but we are supplying those bombs. The U.S. is not blocking the borders and preventing food, water, and medical supplies from getting to desperate people, but we have supplied billions of dollars to the Netanyahu government, which is doing just that. The U.S. is not annexing occupied Palestinian land, but it is providing political protection for the Israeli government as it does that. Despite the massive financial and military support the U.S. has provided to Israel for many years, the right-wing extremist government of Benjamin Netanyahu has ignored increasingly urgent calls from the U.S. to end the humanitarian disaster in Gaza, to stop settlement expansion in the West Bank, and to lay out initial steps for a two-state solution. The American people have had enough. Poll after poll shows that they are fed up with Netanyahu's war against the Palestinian people and do not want to see their taxpayer dollars support the slaughter of innocent civilians and the starvation of children. The United States has offered Israel unconditional financial support for many years. In recent years, that has amounted to $3.8 billion a year, with numerous additional forms of support.
The amount of that subsidy is remarkable and a testament to AIPAC's clout on Capitol Hill. Altogether, Israel gets more than $3 billion a year in assistance from the United States.
Sometimes the votes go through without a single debate involving billions of dollars. You couldn't spend that kind of money in this country without a huge debate going on. But a foreign government gets this money without debate because simply it's just organized to get it.
Why does Israel get more aid, more U.S. aid, than any other country in the world? $700 per Israeli per year, as opposed to $50 per Egyptian per year, as opposed to $2 per African per year.
Right now, against my vote, Congress is considering another $14 billion in military aid for Israel, $10 billion of which is completely unrestricted military funding. That unconditional support must now end. Instead of begging Netanyahu's extremist government to protect innocent lives and obey U.S. law and international law, our position must be simple and straightforward. Not another nickel for the Netanyahu government if their present policies continue. The United States must use all of the leverage we have to secure an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and across the region, and demand that the massive amount of humanitarian assistance that is needed to prevent famine and widespread humanitarian suffering is able to flow into Gaza. History will judge what we do right now. History will judge whether we stand with starving children, whether we uphold America's professed values, or whether we continue to blindly finance Netanyahu's war machine.
What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons. For real, and these were the children of Israel, according to Genesis chapter 10. These were the children of Israel, according to Genesis chapter 10. These were the children of Israel, according to Genesis chapter 10.